Hi, welcome everyone. This is a special, extraordinary virtual panel here of some super smart people in my Accounting Influencers Network. And we're talking about what's going on with the virus at the moment. And listen, we appreciate you getting a truckload of information right now and things are going crazy, but we thought we'd bring some sanity to proceedings by just chewing around a few key topics and giving you some thoughts on what we are taking with the situation. So I'm just going to ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves very briefly, starting with Dan, and then we'll get started with today's topics. Over to you, Dan Richards.
Thanks, Rob. So yeah, Dan Richards, Strategic Partnership Director with My Firm's App. I've been around the profession for a little over 20 years now. And at My Firm's App, really our focus, normally, and more so at this time, is around helping firms to really care for their clients, to connect and communicate with them in the very best way they can, particularly through the digital channels.
Terrific. Phil?
Hey, good afternoon, or hello, or whenever you listen to this. My name is Phil Hobden. I'm Head of Education at Capitalise. Capitalise is an advisor-led funding platform helping accountants connect their SME clients to over 100 lenders across the UK.
Thank you, Phil. Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe Lacey-Cooper. I am the Event and Portfolio Director of Accountex, which is currently the European largest exhibition and conference for the accountancy and finance profession.
Thank you. Brian?
Brian Coventry, CEO of Symphony. We focus on large to medium accounting firms, primarily around practice management, CRM, system integration and automation.
And Colin?
Hi everyone, Colin Abercrombie. I'm a co-CEO at Prospero Hub. We offer CRM and data services, mainly focused on professional services firms, with the view to enabling their technical teams to become better at drafting leads, pulling leads out of the market, and automating that process for them.
Thank you. So we're just going to open up the discussion with your brief introductory remarks, if you like, your general take on what's happening at the moment, and then we're going to dive into our first topic, which is on how people are making decisions in this critical time. So, Colin, I'm just going to come back to you quickly, and what's your take on the whole thing, just general opening remark?
Yeah, I think the key to this is the overwhelming amount of information and decision points that are being forced at everybody, from everything from staff welfare, technical issues on remote working, health and safety. It's all being fired at everybody. And on top of that, firms have to think about productivity, but probably more importantly, timeliness and effectiveness of what they're doing. So there's a lot of issues facing the average managing partner, the average managing board, not the least of which will be the delay and cancellation of work. In reality, no business is ready for this, but I think accountancy firms have to look at it in the context of they have got the skill set to navigate these waters in-house. Unfortunately, that skill set is dominated by client demands. And I say unfortunately because right now firms have to focus first and foremost on their own abilities to manage this position. They need to focus time and resource immediately on managing the impact on their own business. And in that respect, this is a very different crisis from ones that accountancy firms are used to dealing with. In the main, revenue would maybe lag somewhere and appear elsewhere in a firm. It's not like that just now. And I think that there's a lot of time is going to have to be spent managing the practice, which will come as a bit of a culture change for many firms.
Thanks for that, Colin. We'll dip into some of those topics later. Brian, what's your take on everything that's happening at the moment?
Well, I think we've been just over a week now, where I think most businesses probably took the decision to relocate their team to remote working at home. We've certainly been that way for probably the best part of a week and a half. So I think, what we're seeing is a lot of firms just probably in this time absorbing what that all means in terms of their infrastructure and, how they can best serve their clients and how they can get their team functioning in that particular period. That obviously is requiring some adjustment in terms of how things get done, and that's happening at a pace that they're probably not used to. So, I think basically people are worried with what's going to happen to our business because of what's going to happen to our client's business. So we're in a bit of a state of flux, but I think probably what we'll start to see pretty soon is people will adjust quite quickly. Things will start to settle down, and business in general will get a rough idea of, where they're at with a lot of the initiatives that they've put in place, but also what the government have put in place. I think we're about to go into the second phase of this, where people start to think about, okay, what's next? How long is this going to be? And start considering the impact on themselves and also their clients in the longer term.
Sure, thank you. Zoe, you're in the events industry, you're on the front line in many ways. What's your take on everything?
Well, I don't know if it kind of affected us a bit sooner than everyone else with QuickBooks Connect cancelling, and at the time we were all a bit like, was that a bit cautious? Actually, they were probably right. We followed suit 2 weeks down the line. Things are starting to slow down now, but in those times, it's like day by day, things are changing dramatically. And the most important thing is, I think, it's communication is key. That is one thing I've learned very, very quickly through all of this. This is communication to your clients, communication to your supporters, exhibitors, visitors, and your staff. Most importantly is your staff. Showing empathy and showing communication. And that's kind of what I've learned.
Sure. Thank you, Zoe. Phil, how are you holding up?
Yeah, good. Interesting. So one of the challenges, and I've been in this industry for a while, one of the challenges I've had in this industry for years is that, trying to connect, trying to talk to people virtually. Because what I've done, right? So I've been selling or educating or whatever I do virtually. One of the challenges I've always had is you set up meetings and they can't get Zoom to work, or their microphone doesn't work, or their video camera doesn't work. And all these amazingly simple challenges that you just don't overcome until you get to them. Actually, at the moment, I'm loving the fact that everyone has Zoom working, everyone's microphone works, everyone knows what the technology is. We've been forced into this new way of working, and actually it's dragging people kicking and screaming into adopting things that they were very slow at adopting. And I think that's up and down the board, right? So we're at the forefront of business finance. So as you'd imagine, we're sitting here trying to manage the information coming out from the government, trying to manage the information coming from other sources and banks, whilst at the same time trying to manage process and everything else and expectations of everyone involved. And it's an interesting one. I think our CEO, Paul Surtees, said something really exciting, really interesting. And he said to the team, he said, when you're through this, you will look back at this as one of the most career-defining moments you've had. It will be something that defines who you are, how you work going forward, and how you operate going forward, because nothing will ever be like this again. And I really like that. I really think of it, there's challenges, right? I've got friends whose businesses are genuinely going to struggle. I've got relatives that are self-employed that don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. But actually, at the back of this, the world's going to be a much more different place. And I think there's going to be a lot of learning for businesses, for accountancy firms, for us as individuals about what we do.
Yeah.
On side of that, I'm going for like a long walk every morning. I've never done that in my entire life, right? So, I'm feeling like super healthy at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil. And we're now just going to go to Dan. Dan, what's your overview on what's going on right now?
Thank you. So I agree with so much of what's been said as well. What I think is very interesting is that this is something we're in globally. So this is not just me going through it or you UK, but this is something the whole world is experiencing. Now we might be experiencing it slightly differently, but it kind of creates as much as possible. Then that's to our great advantage. The communication and some of what Colin was talking about a moment ago as well are really very important, I think. But keeping cool heads the very best that we can, and decisions that are right to look after our people and our clients the best that we can at the moment, but without losing sight that there's quite a long way ahead, a few weeks, months ahead in this situation, but life is going to continue at some stage in whatever the new normal looks like. So try to be wise and considered about the decisions that are taken, not making too many snaps.
Thank you. Certainly we are heading into a new way of being, a new way of working. Nobody really knows for sure what's happening tomorrow, really what's happening today. So thank you for those opening comments. We're going to go into 3 or 4 topics now. The first is decision making. We're in very emotional times, and emotional times call for cool heads, but we don't often think logically and rationally in the way we make decisions. And whether we're running an accounting firm, whether in business being served by accountants, we have to make good commercial decisions. So what is your take on how we make tough commercial decisions in emotional times? Brian, can I come to you first on that?
Well, I think first and foremost, there's the initial phase of something like this. We've never been in anything like this before, so you're probably starting out in a space of fear and confusion. So emotionally, that's not an easy space to be in, or a good space to be in terms of decision making. I think the first thing we have to do is, to some extent, accept that this is where we're at, and that it's potentially going to be here for some time yet. It's not going to be fixed next week. And once we accept that, and that, as Dan says, we're all in the same boat together, then we can sit down and start to process, what's important to us. And I think Zoe hit the nail on the head. Right at the moment, communication is king. And I don't think we're in a phase yet where people are necessarily sitting down doing long-term strategic plans around this. Is that, what it's all about for accounting firms, and indeed for us, is our clients and communication. Some are worried about the impact change is going to have on their clients. They know that some of their clients are going to be forced to make changes, perhaps within their team, and maybe they sense they'll have to do the same within their business. And so, the key thing is knowing who we got to talk to in these situations, who's the best person, within the businesses to establish that connection with. And, probably stay away right at the moment from sort of ambulance chasing behaviour, which is blasting the world with outbound emails of, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
I think right now, firms, in order to work out what they do next, have to have that conversation first with their client. And that's the critical thing that must happen now.
Yeah. Phil, you're in the middle of the whole money thing at the moment. We're charging clients at sensitive times, chasing payments, laying people off, shutting things down. What's your take on how we can make better commercial decisions in emotional time?
I think for me, ultimately, it's just be human, right? So you look out there and you look at the happily name and shame some people, but look at the Weatherspoons and the Mike Ashleys of the world, and you just kind of go, really, that's how you're going to deal with this, by being the worst you possibly can? And actually, I think this is probably the most important time to be human. So when you're making a decision, when you're looking through something, when you're thinking over something, actually to go, what are the impact on other people within that chain, right? How are other people going to feel? What is the impact? If we just apply that to the decisions we make, firstly, that's going to help alleviate the stress from people and up and down, right? Because we feel stressed about having to make those decisions, but actually within the business. But the other thing is, and I guess I can kind of look at this from just my LinkedIn inbox, right? About 7 or 8 people that I know that run businesses that I'm connected with personally that I know. Like day one, were reaching out to me and going, how do I get money? And their instant decision was to panic. And I sat them down and said, look, let's talk this through. What's your cash runway, right? When have you got income coming in? When's the point where you're going to need the funds? And when they actually started to look at it, they were like, well, we're probably actually okay for 2 or 3 months. So, we don't need to panic just yet. And it was kind of just stepping them back from making a decision too quickly because they feel they have to make a decision, to actually looking at it calmly with a cool head on and just, what's the best approach? When do we need to take these actions? So actually, I think there's a desire to act fast, and I get that, but just make sure that you're stepping back and looking at every decision before you make it, because those decisions can impact. Deferring loans and loan payments can impact later on down the line. All these kind of decisions you make, they have impacts. Look at those impacts and work out the right time you need to take those decisions.
Yeah, thank you. Colin, what are your thoughts?
I think looking at it from the managing of a firm perspective, I think there's some brutally tough decisions that are going to have to be made here. I don't think there are any decisions that managing boards are facing that are going to be easy. I mean, first and foremost, no firm is going to be able to respond to the immediate demand and the volume of that demand from all clients. It's just not physically possible. So I think there's going to have to be, but Phil's point is valid. You've got to stay human in this. But I think a firm, in order to balance the commercial reality with its resources, needs to look at what can we afford to deliver pro bono, because it will turn out to be pro bono, and you've got to stick to that and decide that's the limit. But we need to earn, and we need to continue to earn. I think that's going to call for a lot of firms triaging their clients, who will survive, who should survive, who was in bad shape before we went into this crisis, and devote resources to where they're most likely to have the most positive outcome. And I know that sounds brutally tough, but I don't think firms have a choice. And I think the reason they don't have a choice is that there is a limited number of client-facing key advisors within most firms. They are the critical players right now. And I believe they need to be gathered into working groups. They need to provide a consistent message to clients based on their collective experience and not all be running in different directions, which is, professional firms tend to do that. The key advisors operate as lone wolves. This is the time for pulling them into groups, running on remote comms the way we're doing today. Mm. I think for clients who fall below that cutoff, if you like, to phrase it that way, I think the firm has to look to provide one-size-fits-all solutions by way of comms. So checklists, help sheets, specific industry sector guidance that can be pushed out and applies en masse. But to me, the biggest decision that a firm's going to have to face is, if I were running a firm right now, I would possibly be contemplating furloughing all of my compliance staff. Now, culturally, and in terms of medium-term morale impact, that's going to be huge. But those compliance staff will have little or nothing to do, and a lot of what they may be doing or may be looking to get involved in might not be paid for further down the line. And those are brutally difficult decisions for a firm to make in terms of what it does with its people and how it treats its client base. Mm. But fundamentally, it cannot be all things to all people in this situation. Yeah. And I think it's going to be careful of or avoid trying to do that.
Thanks, Colin. Dan, a time for sentiment and compassion or tough, hard-nosed business decisions?
It depends what time of day you're asking me. It has to be both, doesn't it? I think Colin's got it right there. You've got to walk that line between the two. There is a commerciality. We're a business. Business requires money to keep it running, and those things are ever present and are important. And as others have said, but included, that human touch is essential because we are all in this together. Mm. So I think I won't repeat what's already been said. So to build on what's been said, there is also an opportunity and perhaps a need for innovation at a time like this as well. What I mean by that is, if you listen to some of the old stories of Steve Jobs and Apple and those sorts of famous regurgitated stories, one of the things they did is they took what they already had and they used it in different ways. And there's perhaps an opportunity to look at what each firm has got in the toolbox at the moment, what's there with technology, what's there with people, what's there with skill bases, what's there with partners that can interact together and say, well, maybe we can use these things more smartly. We've already got this stuff here at the moment. Let's deploy it in a different way or package things together that might achieve a different outcome. And being able to step back a little bit and to look at it outside of the commotion of it all and say, well, actually, is there some innovation here that is actually going to do us some good as well? And the other one is perhaps trying, as far as humanly possible, not to use the supply chain as your bank. And because everyone is in this together. So if we, the government, whatever people may think of governments, but actually they're putting a ton of money and resource behind these things. And they are doing that in other countries as well. And so long as we can avail of those things as soon as they can be made available, the better. But for all businesses to try and remember that we're in it together part and not use the supply chain as a bank, because one decision, I think Phil mentioned it, the impacts will flow down and it all comes around at the end of the day. So can we innovate? We're using what we've already got more smartly, people, resources and tech, and can we use the available grants and money that's been put forward rather than just cutting out the supply chain?
Thank you. Zoe, emotions are high, business decisions need to be made. What are your thoughts?
Well, as you got to know, we had to go through an announcement to 30,000 people and tell them that we were postponing Accountex, and that was emotional time. Like I say, we're all in this together. I come from a very proactive industry, and during this time, it's going to start to be a bit better now. We can start to be proactive again, But in the last 2 weeks, we've not been able to be proactive. We've had to be reactive to every single moment, every minute. Something's changed and we've had to react to it. One thing I've learned is kind of just reacting steadily. You know, from the email from your nursery about your nursery fees, the supply chain deciding if they're going to charge you or not. You know, it's reacting steadily and just taking your time with these things and reacting in the right way. Because, like Phil said, you could be the worst you can possibly be, or you can be the best you can possibly be. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to be at the moment, the staff, the exhibitors and everyone we work with. And I'm hoping that people will kind of respect that. We're in this together, and we hope that that will be good. And it's just, you know, taking on well. I mean, like we say, we're all human. So reacting steadily and then hopefully getting into that one where we can start to be proactive again. And like Dan said, you know, look at what's in the toolbox. Let's see what we can do with what we've got and make the best out of that.
Sure. You talk about proactivity. It is the word of the day. We're trying to get ahead of this. We're trying to make big calls early, obviously keeping and serving our clients, but anticipating what's coming up and even being proactive enough to plan for post-CV19. So what are our thoughts on proactivity? What does it mean? Colin, I'll come to you first on this.
Yeah, it's difficult in the current climate, as Zoe was pointing out there, but we can still achieve it on a mass scale. It's maybe difficult to achieve it on a proactive one-to-one. I think the tech channels are there for us to push out. You've facilitated a number of initiatives on this yourself, Rob, in terms of getting groups of professionals to push out information. So I think the broadcasting channels are there. Firms should utilise them. Phil's mentioned the, shall we say, the Queen Victoria's funeral-like pace of all the professions to adopt and get in the digital transformation piece. But this is an area where use of video, use of broadcasting channels, postings on LinkedIn that are interactive. These things are key to being proactive, and I think it's the only way you're going to be able to, which is because if you're relying on clients again, you're going to react to individual needs and individual demands on a daily basis. I think again that makes it critical that a firm, the pulling together that I mentioned of the client-facing team, the advisory team, they should formulate firms' views on as much as possible. What is the firm's view on whatever that may be? And it may be the raising of external funding, it may be the management of the supply chain, it may be negotiations with crowdfunders in terms of loan repositioning. Whatever it is, the firm should have a view and perhaps establish relationships at senior level within banks, within lenders and such like, so that they're able to be aware of those views and therefore avoid clients running down rabbit holes in terms of looking for success or looking for assistance where sure. Perhaps know the answer.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think that would be my message, is to embrace the broadcasting channels to facilitate that.
Very good, thank you. Brian, is proactivity and even thinking strategically a pipe dream, or can we actually get ahead of this?
I think it's just a healthy disposition, being proactive. You know, just back to what we were saying before, you know, the importance right at this moment in time is to understand where are we in order for us to try and have some insight into where we're going to end up. And that's all about communication. And in order for communication to be effective, it needs to be clear, it needs to be explicit, and it needs to be direct. And the only way you can do that is between person right at this moment in time.
We might be losing you a little bit, Brian, there. Can you just repeat that last bit for us? We lost him. Okay.
I think I lost you there, Rob.
Yeah, do you just want to repeat that last little bit for us, Brian? You said about being explicit.
So what did you hear, Rob?
I think I had something about as communications have got to be explicit. Can you?
Yeah, so I mean, sorry, I've been struggling with the internet a little bit here, but
I think, hold it, Brian.
In order for communication to be effective, it needs to be clear, it needs to be explicit, and it needs to be direct. And that needs to happen in a person-to-person state.
Okay, we'll get your internet fixed, Brian. I'm going to go to Dan. Dan, is everybody firefighting, or can we just lift our head and be a little bit more proactive?
Yeah, there's a lot of firefighting going on, isn't there? And naturally so, as Zoe put it really well a moment ago, there's that we are being reactive, but if you can be reactive in the best way that you possibly can. So outside of that, I think it beholds the leaders of a firm or a business to try and step back the very best that they can, to be able to look at where they can be proactive on a communication, being on the front foot. As Colin says, the distribution channels are there, whether it's apps that you've got, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's the things like Slack and other stuff that you've got at the moment, whatever channels that exist. Going back to my point earlier, you've got stuff in the toolbox already, so let's use those things as wisely as you possibly can, and be on the front foot with clients. I've noticed quite a few people, we're one of them, but there's quite a number around who are trying to consolidate a lot of information, so it makes it easier for the firm to be able to get curated information out to their clients, because it's so hard, isn't it, to try and disseminate all the stuff that's out there. That's one example of proactivity. Maybe just use the people that are on your team already. Pick up the phone. Is it content you've got that you can give us that's going to help us give information to our clients and make your life a little bit easier to get it out there? And as much as we can be proactive with these decisions for what the next few months are going to be, then the better.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
I think it's a tough one, isn't it? Right? You want to be. I think you have to be proactive, because otherwise you'll drown under being reactive. But if to be proactive, you need that space to do it. I think Dan nailed it when he said, "Look what's out there. Don't redo what other people are. If someone else has done something really well, don't go out and redo it and rebuild it. Use what other people have got and share it." This is a time where actually there's so much information about, but there's some really good one-stop resources you can point people in the direction of. And actually it's about getting that information in front of your clients as much as possible, because actually, do you know what? Here's a massive secret. Most people don't know exactly what's going on. There's banks that are still building policies for the lending the government announced before they even knew that the government were going to announce it. So the banks are sitting there going, "This is brilliant. How the hell do we do this?" So everyone's, the analogy I keep using, and I'm definitely going to overuse this, but it's like we're driving over a bridge whilst we're putting the wheels on the car, whilst someone else is building the bridge in front of us. But it's not just us that's doing that. Everyone is. So look what's out there. Reuse other people's content. Don't be proud about saying, "Hey, we didn't create this, but this is a bloody good resource for us to share out." That way, if you can get the basic questions that every business owner has the same basic questions, get all of that addressed, that's going to take down your incoming considerably. And then you can start to be proactive with the businesses that are going to need that proactive support. And actually, if you know your clients, you should already get an idea of what businesses are going to be strong and be able to survive this, and which businesses potentially might not.
Sure. Let's talk about the tech very quickly. Really quick answers, please. The challenge of radical remoteness that we've got right now. How is the tech helping us, Dan?
Massively. We're all on Zoom, right? And I'm not a stock advisor, but Zoom and AWS seem like two good, interesting ones for the future. But it's been a challenge. I've been really, really impressed with how, as a nation, people have got to grips with remote working so fast. Within the space of 10 days. So people are using Zoom, people are using communication apps, people are using the video conferencing in different ways, but they're cracking on and they're getting it done, and things are happening. One firm I spoke to just yesterday, they shared how actually they have, with all their data tracking, they're actually more efficient now than they were 2 weeks ago before all this kicked off. Now that's not everyone's story, of course, but it shows that there are some good stories out there where you can get things out fast, you can put the infrastructure in, you can use the tech that exists and is already proven to work, and get it going. So yeah, I think the technology is there and we have to use it. There's no other option. Choose the best stuff you can and deploy it well.
Zoe, how are you tooled up with the tech?
My company, Diversified, interestingly enough, went into the cloud 4 weeks ago. Our IT department came in, they gave us the training on Teams and using everything. So, we are fine. But I'm still thinking, the people we deal with, the accountants out there, don't have this technology. You know, we just presume that they're all progressive. They all have the technology there. A lot of them don't. And we all thought MCD was going to do that last year. We're like, yeah, let's get them all out on the tech. Didn't really happen. Who would have thought something like this would actually be the thing that actually got people to take that tech off from the shelf and get it out there? And this is where, you know, firms will probably start heading into a bit more of a progressive world now, because they are getting it, they're understanding it, and will be confident in using it. It's going to be quite an interesting place for the software companies to be, I think, when we come out of this.
Yeah. Phil, tech, friend or foe?
Oh, friend. Well, obviously not Brian for his Wi-Fi today, but in general, it's friend. I love tech, right? I've been working remote for years, so I've loved this. What I love is the fact that like my mum is like on FaceTime now, and you know, that saves me a journey. Yeah, it's all these great pieces of technology that actually, and it's work, for sure it's work, right? But actually, I will bet most of us here have spoken to someone in the last week that we haven't spoken to in months. Just because actually we're like, oh, I can't go and see this person I haven't seen in months. I'm going to FaceTime them. Brilliant. So like, we're going to come out of this in a world of where everyone can understand technology and everyone can understand how it works. And actually, do you know what? If you can't adopt to that, you probably ain't going to come out of this world at all. The most interesting thing I've heard is accountancy firms going out and buying laptops in bulk. I love that, but I did hear a story. I don't know how genuine this is. I did hear a story that one firm told their team to take home their desktops, and I just had visions of people traveling on the underground with like desktop Dell computers or whatever, monitor under one arm.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Remote working, data security, all of this stuff. How are we going to cope? What's your view on the tech?
Well, I think the tech is a friend. You know, I think the first thing that was obvious to me is all of the face-to-face meetings that I had were easily moved to a Zoom or a Teams meeting, so that wasn't a problem. I've had two examples, so I'm not saying this is across the board, but I've had two examples where one firm says we've been able to accelerate a change that ordinarily would have taken us X months, and we've been able to achieve it in so many days. In another case, because we are where we are, the firm has had to throttle through behaviour change, and this is probably the other area that's a little bit more challenging. Is people get used to working in with the tech inside an office according to set agendas, and when they're remote, some of that can't happen anymore. I see in some cases firms are actually using this as an opportunity to force through some process and behaviour changes that perhaps are long overdue. In terms of confidentiality, I think we were speaking to a client in Sydney last night, where we've outsourced perhaps elements of our business to places such as India, where you know the security around client data and confidentiality is now has to be considered, because this is happening in people's homes, and we don't have that security. So that's something that you can't fix overnight. But these are just some of the things that firms will be grappling with at the moment. Sure,
thank you, Colin. Where would we be without the tech?
Lost, I think, at this particular moment, wouldn't we? I think the interesting thing here, with Zoe's point, in my view, is that the outside world, I think, would assume the profession was, or professions generally, were ahead in this space, but for many reasons, they've been shy to do so. I mean, digital transformation as a concept has been a C-suite priority in everything outside the professions for years. The accountancy profession in particular has been very, very slow to adapt to that. I think there's all sorts of reasons for that. I think there's the natural characters in the professions who perhaps, take this video call we're on, would be uncomfortable in this situation with a client initially. But I think that, this COVID experience is going to change all of that. I think if I was to give any of them, a bit of advice right now, it would be let your team free to deploy applications as they find them. Let them free to have a go. Remove any penalties for getting it wrong. There is no getting it wrong. The dogs will bark, the kids will run in, there'll be pictures on the wall that you didn't really want to get in shot, but that will happen, and I think people should chill about all the things that normally in British business we get very uptight about, and just go with it. And the tech will improve massively as a result of the demands that we're now putting on it and the feedback that the digital corporates are going to get from this experience as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's get our crystal balls out. Dan, you wanted to add something?
Just very quickly on that one, it's to say ask for help as well. Ask your existing suppliers for help, or if, as Zoe and Colin just said, you're not using this sort of thing at the moment, just ask for help. I think this is an environment where you can break down all the barriers of cynicism and people are just out to sell me or make a quick buck and all that nonsense. That can all just go by the wayside, I hope. And just ask for help and let the technology you've got be put to better use, or ask for some stuff if you need to get it in place fast. There's a lot of people around that genuinely want to help.
Sure, very good. So, Chris.
Sorry, I was going to say, Rob, and also don't genuinely, do you know what? I've loved seeing people I work with, family that I've never met before, and their dogs and their cats. It just makes life, people are becoming human. It's lovely. I had a picture fall off my wall in the middle of a meeting the other day, and it just created a very interesting conversation point. It's nice, right? It's kind of nice.
Yeah, we're certainly breaking down some barriers. We're being a lot more vulnerable in our home surroundings. So, crystal ball time. Let's look to the future. What does the new normal look like? In what ways will things never be the same again? Zoe, I'm going to come to you first. Women always know what's going on.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But what I will say is technology is vital at the moment, but there will come a need for that human face-to-face interaction. That is going to come. It is natural to all of us. I can't wait to go and see my family again, and that is going to come back at some point, and we know we will get through this. So I'm looking forward to seeing ahead human interaction, and this is where I'm going to plug Accountex, because that's where you can do it. It's about networking, and I'm really, really looking forward to doing that down the line. As the future, I think we're just we're all in this together. I think we're going to come out of this stronger. I'm more closer and making stronger relationships than I've ever had, just because of what we're going through, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Thoughts on the future?
Yeah, the future. Business has changed forever in my view. We're not going to go back to the way we used to do things. I think this is not just a week at home because the weather's bad. This is big, and I mean, remote working will be a thing for established businesses where remote working just didn't exist unless your fridge or your boiler needed serviced. And that's going to change hugely, and people will find a new way, a new structure that makes remote working function for them in a professional environment. I think the consequence of this, you're alluding there to, I think it was Phil mentioning people taking desktops home. Digital transformation post this event will be at the centre of every single firm's forward strategy. It will be right up there on the agenda. Nobody will go through this again in the panic measure they've had. But I have to say, the summary of the future for me is that I've got great faith in the resilience of the British business community. I think we've shown it time after time in the last 20 years. A lot of things have been bold at the business community they've dealt with. I don't know that many SME business owners identify with recession terminology. I think they view business as hard most of the time. And what they do is they get up every morning, they and their teams, they put one foot in front of the other and they keep going. And that's what will get us through this bit. I hope that when we do that, 12 months, 6 months, however long it takes down the line, that people have the introspection to look back and say, right, what are the lessons here? What are the residual issues we need to pick up and make sure we're ready for when things like this do happen again in the future?
Yeah. Thank you. Brian, are we heading into recession, or does the future look bright after COVID-19?
Well, I think, we're in this bit. We got to find out what this bit means. We took a straw poll inside our organisation yesterday on when we thought we'd all be going back to what we thought was normal, and it's pretty varied. Some of the dates, some are very optimistic, some are pretty pessimistic. But yes, it's a recession. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I guess businesses have got some muscle memory around what to do in that sort of situation. Probably the crystal ball is we'll get to Christmas and we'll look back and we'll go, so it took a virus to sort of teach us what climate change was all about and the impact, the positive impact this has probably had in that area. But I think we'll also reflect on the importance of the relationship and how, how we approach that differently in the future. And I also think, we'll look back and we'll think about, do we have to work the way we've been working in recent years? And I think that's up for discussion and that's up for change.
Yeah, thank you. Phil, what's happening in the future?
I don't think anything will ever be the same again, right? I think, we've got new ways of working, we've got new ways of talking, we've got new ways of working with people and customers. I don't think anything will be the same again. And I think actually that's probably a good thing, because this is going to give the boot up the backside that a lot of businesses have needed to change and adapt. I think it's going to make people appreciate what they've got a hell of a lot more. And I think the worst thing actually out of all of this is that I know that the moment we get through COVID-19, Brexit's going to be back on the agenda. So we're going to go from Brexit to COVID to Brexit to whatever happens next. And that's us, right? But ultimately, I think when we finally get the all clear and we know the world's going back to normal, it's going to be like us winning the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup, the Cricket World Cup, the Olympics, every award at the Oscars, and it's going to be the biggest party ever because everyone's going to go out and celebrate and be happy. And there'll be a wave of happiness just for a short time that will kind of wash over the UK. And it will be a really, really, really fun weekend that everyone will have a big hangover from and then go back to remote working on Monday morning.
That's a great picture. I'm reading a book called Rehumanize Your Business at the moment, and it is all about the power of human relationships. Dan, let's come to you. What's your verdict for the future?
I'm buying into Phil's version right now. That sounds awesome.
I'm not normally this positive, by the way. I mean, I'm having this like wave of positivity now.
Right. Well, hold on to it, Phil. Ride it.
The only person in the whole country that's keeping that positivity going.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Future is here and future is there, isn't it? So there's a scale to this, and I think for very short-term future, it's going to be a bumpy ride. There's no two ways around that. I was reading something the other day that says actually, and it was stating the obvious, but it was helpful. There's a whole swathe of society right now where this is their first time going through such a bumpy occasion. Now, none of us have been through COVID-19 before, and the things on a global scale, but most of us here have got grey hair of one sort or another, and we've been through various things over our lifetime. So I think number one, keep calm. We're going to get through this. Is the main thing. The Royal Marines have a great saying. I was never in the Marines, but through some shared experiences, I learned about cheerfulness in the face of adversity. So there is some real human suffering that's going to happen, and deep sympathy for those families that encounter that. But for the rest of us as a society, cheerfulness in the face of adversity. We will get through this. And that necessity is the mother of all invention.
Sure.
There's going to be stuff that changes through here, as everyone said, around remote working, digital transformation, as Colin's been talking about, that are just necessities going forward. But I'd like what Zoe said as well about the relationships. It would be good to give people a proper hug and a high five at some point soon, and get those face-to-face relationships going back on. And if we can shift, we've all seen those maps that have come out on the telly and the internet, where the air pollution levels have just gone right down, and somehow the earth has gone, yeah, do you know what? I'll take this time, thanks, and I'll start cleaning some things up. So if we can not just press the go button again in a few months' time and knacker things up straight away, that'd be helpful.
That's very good. Well, thanks, everyone. I'm going to ask you for your closing thoughts in a moment as we wrap up, and give some encouraging words of wisdom to the accountants listening to help the clients they serve, and the accounting influencers listening that serve the accounting profession, that are in many ways at the hub of all of this, because they stand between the government, the health service, and all the businesses that are keeping the country going. So they play a very important role. But it's been great to get your thoughts today on a few topics, and we know all of this will change in a few days. But let me come to you first. Phil, what are your closing thoughts and words of encouragement to the people watching and listening?
It'll get better. It genuinely will get better. But also, don't expect that you have to answer everything that moment all the time. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer. It's okay to say, I'll come back to you. Just make sure you do. And remember that what you do now will define how people see your business moving forward. So, it genuinely will be the kind of business, whatever hard decisions you have to make, and they do, but be the kind of business that when you come out of this, people will look at you and go, yeah, they had to make some hard decisions, but they did it right and they did it correct. And actually, I still want to be associated with that. Because the worst thing you can do in an environment where it's this challenge is to make the wrong decision look bad and actually damage that reputation moving forward. Because COVID-19 will be this much of a very long lifetime for your business.
Thank you, Phil. And the phrase that rings to mind for me is be the one they remember when the dust settles and the fires have gone out, whatever that looks like. Brian, what are your final encouraging thoughts to those watching and listening?
I think use this time to learn a little bit more about humanity. Use that to strengthen some of the cultural dynamics within your firm for the future. I think a lot of businesses could do with that. We had an earlier example, I think, from Phil on Wetherspoons. Was it you, Phil, that said that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good example of, how not to conduct yourself. And just probably remember that in adversity, there's always opportunity. And there's been many an innovative thought and an outcome happen in these times. So go hunting. Thank
you, Brian. Colin, thoughts from you on how we can send people away invigorated and positive about what's happening?
Yeah, there's no point in denying they're difficult times, but we're going to have to focus on the positives. And the positives for accountancy firms are that there are a tremendous bunch of skilled people within every firm in this country. And I think they've got to utilise those commercial and financial skills of the firm initially for the firm's benefit. On the basis if you're not in business, you're going to struggle to help anybody else. So I think they've got, they are well placed to do this. They've got to make tough decisions quickly and get beyond those, but they've got to make them humanely, as other members of the panel have said today. They've got to do it in the right way, but don't avoid them. But I think always bear in mind that there will be a way forward. There's another side to this. We will get beyond it and focus on the shape and the reputation and the image that you want your business to be when you come out the other side. This is a great chance to redesign your culture, to redesign the technology that underpins your business, to redesign public perception, to redesign the way you and your colleagues and your subordinates interact. And take the time, make the time to do that and design the business you want to come out the other side with. This is a great time to facilitate that.
Thank you, Colin. Dan, words of encouragement?
A little bit of ancient wisdom, treat others how you want to be treated. And I think, that is in family, it's in personal relationships. I think in business, it's treat your suppliers like you want your customers to treat you. And if we can keep those sorts of things running, then all businesses will come out in the best shape they can be. The other one is rely on your people a bit more. I think Colin hinted at it a moment ago. There's a great opportunity now where whoever I is, doesn't have to do everything. We've got a team around, we're all in this together. Let people step up, encourage it. Let that innovation not just be a tech innovation and digital, but let it be a people innovation as well. Let people rise up within your firm and maybe contribute in a way they've never done before.
Yeah, that's great. Zoe, leave us with some encouraging thoughts, would you?
Communication is king. That's with your family, your clients. I've been in the accountancy profession. I'm not an accountant, but I'll tell you what you accountants do. They have this natural ability to want to care, support and help. And I've worked in many different industry sectors, and I will tell you that accountants, they just want to help and support each other. And if those accountants can go out there and help their clients and help everyone through this, then, I know the accountants will do that. And like I say, I think this is time to really think and reflect, like how you act now will, how it look in the future. Like Phil said, this is your time to really show how strong and good you are, because how you act right now will be considered in the future. So I say communication is king or queen, however you want to say that.
Excellent. Well, that's been great. My final message to everyone is SOS. So the first is stay safe, look after yourself. The second is to offer help. We talked about the power of relationship and supporting one another. So that's the O. And the final S is save the world. And we can do this together. We'll pull through it. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time, your insights, your preparation today. And we hope you watching and listening have got something from these messages that can aid you in troubled times and give you some encouragement that there are better days to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.